Hello. Today I am here with Victoria and we are talking all about podcasting. So listen, if you love podcasting, if you're thinking about jumping into podcasting, if everyone keeps telling you to get into podcasting, this is the show you want to be watching. We are going to be talking about the benefits of it. Victoria has been in this world for a long time and she is super excited to talk about harnessing your power with podcasting. It's going to be so much fun. For those of you that don't know me, I am Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at Her Talk Show. If you haven't already subscribed, girl, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. These podcasts are guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
We already have people jumping on live. Yes. Thank you so much for being here live. If you're watching on the replay, we love you too. Jump in the comments, say hello so we can show you some love. Listen, we have had over 500 women grace this stage. We are adding another one to the list today. Victoria, she is the founder of a podcast booking agency where she works with expert business owners to build their brands and grow their businesses through leveraging podcast interviews. She also hosts the Best Guest podcast and is a co-author of the most amazing marketing book ever by Mark Schaefer and friends. Super excited to have her joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yes, I am so excited. I have been podcasting for probably about 8 years now. This podcast itself is about 2.5 years old. I've interviewed probably close to 600 women at this point. I need to do like a recount. I love podcasting. I love doing the podcast and I love being a guest. I've been on over 100 podcasts myself, and I totally agree. Podcasting is the place to be.
Yeah, for sure. I think if someone's looking to get into podcasting, being a guest, I don't know what you feel, but being a guest can offer you a good sort of taster without having to do all the work yourself. You could pop into other people's podcasts, have a chat like we're doing, and then see if you feel it's for you.
Yeah, I always tell that to people whenever they're like, this looks like fun. I want to start a podcast. I'm like, girl, first guest podcast, a dozen or 2 times. Then, we can talk about the other stuff. Cause it's 2 totally different animals.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Did you get into it as a guest first or?
No, by myself.
By yourself. Okay.
Yeah. It was a podcast called Human Better 365, which I still have, and I will eventually jump back into that. And it was just myself as a coach teaching personal development.
I think it's so good though, because it really helps you to hone your message, think through your thoughts, practicing.
Yeah. And really prepares you for stage.
Oh, I bet. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's very convenient. You can do it from your own home or wherever you are, actually. I know one of our clients is a trucker. So he's all over America tuning into his podcasts, guest appearances. So so convenient.
I love that. So how did you jump into podcasting? Tell us your story. How did this come to be?
Sure. So my background is journalism, and then I moved to marketing and communications. And when I had my daughter, which was about 12 years ago now, I went freelance, and I was supporting a couple of authors at the time. And I did a course to update my skills on book marketing. And one of the new things they were talking about, this was probably around 2018, 2019, was podcasting. And for authors, it was a really good idea to get booked on other people's podcasts to talk about their books. So I had, as I said, I had a couple of clients I was working with at the time, and somebody else on the course who had written a book, he was saying, I really want to try out this being podcast guest, but I don't have the time to research the shows, pitch the shows. I'm running a business. Can anyone do it for me? So that's when I decided to start experimenting with that. I was like, I could try. which I did. And the clients that I was working with, this chap, Dave McEwen, as well, they got great results. Like, he sold loads of books, but I think it was benefits as well that he hadn't thought about, like potentials for collaborations with hosts.
Yeah.
There were a couple of times that when we pitched him to leadership type shows, they came back and went, oh, do you know what? He'd actually be perfect for a series of webinars we want to develop, or, you know, can he come in and do some consulting work? So I think it's that networking side that can be really powerful. That isn't the first thing that you maybe think about when you're contemplating being a guest on podcasts.
Yeah, definitely networking. For
Mm,
sure. What are
yeah.
your thoughts? What are your thoughts on networking? I think one of the biggest issues that I see amongst female entrepreneurs, female business owners, is a lack of
Mm,
networking. What's your thoughts
yeah.
around that?
Yeah. I think that networking is so powerful, but maybe you can maybe feel awkward about it to start with. You know, do I go to an event? How do I network? Do I just walk up to people? And I think sometimes if it's not something you're used to, it can feel a bit uncomfortable. And I do think that podcasting actually is a great way to go about doing that, because you're having this one-on-one conversation. So you're getting to know somebody anyway. So yeah, but I do feel that networking is really powerful. We've through networking on podcasts and at events, that's how a lot of our clients find us.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you talk about podcasting and the power behind it and getting known,
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean?
It's getting known to your target audience, I think, because podcasts have such niche audiences. You can really focus in on your marketing and talk to the people that you want to talk to. So it's not about being on the biggest shows necessarily, but it's about finding the shows that have the listeners that you want to connect with. And through being a guest on podcasts with this audience, you can really become known for what you do and attract your ideal clients. You know, it's brilliant for building that know, like, and trust among your people, attracting the right kind of clients to you through showing up as yourself. It also offers you a lot of content that you can repurpose. So you can actually grow your platforms as well through your podcast interviews, using those as sort of a pillar of content, and then you can share them across your platforms. So again, you're showing up in all these different ways to your audiences, which is going to help you become known for what you do.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I love what you're saying as far as biggest shows versus the right shows. I think so many times it could be maybe disheartening if you are on a show and it gets, 42 views or 42 likes or something like that, and you see these big guru, podcasters that have hundreds of thousands of views, and it can be a little disheartening. But I love what you're saying as far as making sure you're on the right show,
Yeah.
with the right niche, and you're talking to the right people.
Absolutely. Like, one of our clients, for example, she works in the finance industry, supporting widows in the first 3 years when they lose their partner. And we booked her on some really niche shows, so not huge shows, a few hundred listeners, a few thousand maybe, but they had very engaged communities. And I think by the time 6 of her interviews went live, she signed 2 new clients because they were the right shows. So I think that's always really worth bearing in mind when you're thinking about being a guest on podcasts. You don't have to be on those huge shows to make a real impact on your business.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that. How does podcasting accelerate a business? Like, why should somebody even bother taking, an hour a week to jump on somebody's podcast?
Hmm. And when you're a guest on podcasts, so we've talked about some of the benefits. It can really help you humanize your brand, build those know, like, and trust factors with your audience. But it's really great for your SEO as well. So you'll often get a backlink, at least one backlink to your website when you're a guest on podcasts. So when this is something that you're making part of your routine, maybe you're doing an interview a week or a couple a month, but you're building those backlinks. And that's really great. That's going to generate traffic for you. You're going to show up more in search. So that's one good reason. And as we've talked about, I think it's really important to be on the right shows. So if that hour of your time where you show up is spent talking and connecting with your target audience, networking with a host, then that is a good investment.
Yeah, agree with you on that. Owning your podcast, your own podcast versus guest podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
Always a conundrum.
It
What's your
is,
thoughts on
isn't
that?
it? Well, the clients we work with, I must say a number of them have started their own shows after being a guest because they've enjoyed it so much. It's different. I'm sure you've experienced this. So having your own podcast, that's going to be a lot more work. And I think sometimes that can be underestimated when someone starts a podcast about the actual amount of time it's going to take. And there are ways around that. Obviously, you can outsource, you could go live and cut down the editing. There's different ways you can get help, but it is going to be a time investment. And then building that audience, that is also something that's going to take time that you're going, so I think that's why a number of podcasts fade quickly, is because people maybe expect those instant results, and it's actually, you need to think about why you're doing it. I think you need to be clear of what your goals are. If you're starting your own podcast, what is success going to look like for you with your own show? And it could be, a great way. I think Gary Vee was talking about this just this week, I saw, and he was saying start a podcast, invite your potential clients on to chat with you. It's can be much easier than say, hey, do you want to talk and I'm going to try and sell you something. You're building the relationship with these people that you want to work with. So there's that side, but yeah, it's just worth understanding the time commitment of putting a show together. And then being a guest can also be a great way to promote your own show. We definitely have represented clients who want to get out there and talk on other shows, because there's that really collaborative feel in the podcasting industry. It's not, if you listen to this show, you're not going to listen to that show. So if you're time limited and you're new to this, perhaps start with being a guest, pop on there and borrow other people's audiences and use those to grow yours.
Yeah. What's your advice as far as, I think one of the biggest questions I get is, how do I find podcasts?
Oh, how do you
So,
find podcasts?
yeah,
Okay,
so
I
what's
like
your
this one.
advice on that? People who are like, I don't even know, how do I do that?
Yeah, okay. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. You could start with your own community. Who do you know who might have a podcast? If you're really new to this and you're feeling nervous, there's nothing wrong with just going on a few small shows, maybe that a friend runs or something, to get your confidence up there. I think after you've done a handful and you know your way around it, then you're going to be wanting to find the right shows. So you can look on iTunes on their new and noteworthy section. That will sometimes show you shows that could be looking for guests that are fairly new, but you can also search on there. Listen Notes is a great podcast search engine that lists all the podcasts. You could go on there and do a search. There are Facebook groups that you can join where hosts will advertise if they're looking for guests. Be a guest maybe, but if you look on Facebook and have a search, that can be a really good way to find shows. One of my favorite ways I quite like is, maybe if you've written a book, or even if you haven't, but you can think of people that are in your niche who may have written a book, you could search the author and see what shows they've been on, if their audience is the same as your audience. And that can be a good way to see what shows are coming up that they've been on. And it can at least help, you can start to put together a long list that you can then look into further and evaluate. There's
Yeah.
quite a good website called Owl Tale. So owl like the bird and then tail. And you can search people in there. So again, somebody, if you were an author, it could be a book that sits alongside you on the shelf. Look up that person, see what they've done, or just maybe if you're a coach, somebody else in the coaching industry, see what they've been on. That can really help grow your list. Other ways, you can Google the roundup list. So say it's mental health podcasts you're after, Google top mental health podcasts in 2023, and that's going to give you a list.
Yeah.
There's
Definitely.
lots of different ways you can build it.
And then what are some things that people need to know about themselves when looking to guest podcast?
So you need to know what topics you can talk about or that you want to talk about. But I suppose bringing it back from that, you need to think about your goal. What is it that you want to achieve through being a guest on podcast? Because that's then going to influence the topics that you choose to talk about. You may have secondary goals as well. So maybe one of your goals is to get clients for your business, but maybe a secondary goal is to be known for something else, like anti-bullying in the digital space, or, so you can have different ideas, different things that you want to communicate, I suppose, and be known for. And once you know those, that's a really good place to start.
Yeah. I was listening. So I run my business very much through storytelling. The catalyst for pretty much my entire brand is built on my story. And the, three main areas of which I teach in are the areas of which were fails in my life. However, I do talk to quite a few business owners where their story, like their life story, does not collide correctly with the niche of which they are in. And I get that conversation a lot as far as, I don't want to tell my story. I don't want to talk about my past. I don't talk about anything. I just want to talk about this one niche. And I'm not saying one way is right and one way is wrong, right?
Yeah.
But I was wondering what your advice is. What are your thoughts as far as people sharing where they came from, people sharing their background, people sharing their culture, people sharing tragedy that maybe happened, in order to build a brand around themselves, and then let them know, hey, by the way, I also sell gutters.
But
Yeah.
I think that actually, storytelling is so powerful, isn't it? It's what we remember. It's how we connect with people. It's by sharing stories, it's what makes us relatable, and it builds that connection. It's facts and figures are useful. It's great, to sprinkle some in, but storytelling is what you are going to remember. And it's also often why we would choose to work with somebody above somebody else, because of that connection that we make to them. We have a client and she loves cats, black cats. They're in her branding. Her house is full of them. And so she talks about cats and her love of cats. It's nothing to do with what she does, but she attracts those people into her life who have the same values, So even if it is guttering, obviously you've got to share what you're comfortable sharing, but do share who you are. It helps humanize your brand. It helps build that connection. Another colleague of mine who works with authors, she's really into sea swimming. Again, it's nothing to do with what she does, but across her social media, when she's on podcasts, she talks about this love of sea swimming, what it brings to her life, how it helps her with her mental health. And she said it's so interesting that the clients that are drawn to her usually interested in the sea swimming or nature, and they have the same values. So it can be really polarizing. You're going to push away people as well, but that's okay because you don't want to work with them anyway. So I would say share some of who you are. That's the beauty of podcast interviews.
Yeah, I agree. We have a comment here. I dream of doing a podcast, but haven't stepped out of the fear. You hear that a lot.
Oh, really? Okay. So I don't know how you felt when you started a podcast, but I was horrified by my voice when I first listened to it. That was a major thing that I had to get over. I was like, I don't sound like that. Do I sound like that? And I think actually, when you're doing your own podcast, you can just sit there messing about with your microphone and your headphones. You don't have to go live if you don't want to. You can be fully edited. And in the beginning, I was so conscious of every way I spoke, and I wanted to edit it all. But your confidence grows. But it's a safe space, I think, when you start your own podcast. It's up to you. You can press delete. You can practice it again. If you feel that you need to script it out to start with, you can, until you've got more confidence to kind of let that conversation flow a little bit more, or that knowing that you don't have to be absolutely perfect, because we're used to hearing conversation every day. You don't have to be perfect. But I think it's just beginning, isn't it, really?
Yeah. That actually makes me remember when I first started. So my podcast started on, it wasn't really a podcast. My first thing I ever did was YouTube.
Oh,
And when I got into podcasting, I got into like video and podcasting at the same time. Versus most people do it separate, where they just do the audio only, no video. They're like, it's just
yeah.
easier. I don't have to worry about how I look, this and that. But I started with YouTube, and I was in the health and wellness arena. And so I started with videos of my blender, not me. It was just my hand and my
Okay.
blender. And so I had the video facing like my counter and the blender, like cutting up fruits and vegetables and putting them in the blender. I was in health and wellness. And that was it, with like music in the background, and I had words. Then I moved to showing all of me, but still not speaking, still video, music over it, still the blender and the counter. Then I moved to note cards. So I would like write stuff down on like note cards, like a message, basically, like a 5-minute, and I would flip the note cards. So I'm in it. Now I'm sharing my opinion. Then finally started talking.
That's it, isn't it? It's baby steps. It's just
Yeah.
starting with what you're comfortable doing, and then you can build on that gradually. I think we can so easily see other people who have been doing it, like you said, 8 years now, and can just judge our beginning where someone else is so much further on the journey. And it's just about starting, I think, where you're comfortable and layering it on.
100%, definitely. So, you host the Best Guest podcast, and
That's
you've
right.
also co-authored a book. Tell us about that.
That's right. Yes. So the most amazing marketing book ever. So it was a project that the marketer Mark Schaefer was putting together with people in his community. It was really, really great experience. Everybody's written a different chapter, and Mark assigned things that sometimes outside of our comfort zone. Mine's actually on blogging, for example. So things that stretched people, and then we actually recorded the audio version of it as well. So it's 36 authors. I think it's 36. It's either 35 and somebody did 2 chapters. I can't remember. But from all over the world. So there's all these different accents in the audiobook. I think it was quite a challenge to lace it all together. But yeah, it's been a great experience to be part of.
Awesome. And then your agency, you want to talk about that?
Agency. Oh yes, sure. So yeah, what we do is we book guests on podcasts. So as I mentioned, it got started when I was booking these authors on podcasts. But what I realized that we had hosts saying, "Oh, would you maybe book us on some podcasts? Because we're trying to grow our show, and it can be a great way to guest on other people's podcasts." So that's when I pivoted from just representing authors. This was about 4 years ago. I realized there was often business owners, coaches, and authors. I say experts, really, because the majority of our clients who have written a book, it's part of their business strategy. Some are fiction authors, but that is the minimum. It's more non-fiction books. So that's what we do, and we've grown. We've got a team of account managers now, and yeah, it's just great to really help people get on the right shows and grow their businesses through podcasting.
Agree. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey. I know that you are, you came from working for someone, and then you kind of shifted into growing a business. I know that you are a mother. A lot of Her Nation is filled with female entrepreneurs who are mothers, and we're always looking for tips and tricks on how to do it all.
It's not easy, is it? I can certainly talk about what I do. So firstly, I think I was always destined to work for myself. I don't think I was ever the best. That was always my long-term goal. So yeah, I worked in marketing and journalism, then marketing communications for a number of universities in London. And then when I had my daughter, that was when I think I really took that as the break. I wanted that freedom around what I did to look after her. So that was probably the catalyst. That was my deciding, right, now's the time. I'm going to start working for myself and building something. And how I juggle it. So well, I would say actually I had quite an interesting last year. So I have a son. So my daughter's 12 and my son is 9. And last year he couldn't cope with school anymore. And he's since received an autism diagnosis. And we had quite a long pathway of battling him to get him into the appropriate school. So last year was quite a juggle between having him at home and trying to do some education around running the business when that hadn't been planned. And then this year, we've actually, from September, he got a place at a specialist school. But actually, I've worked out at the moment, I'm doing about 3 hours driving a day on the various school runs. So I've had to be creative, like all mums, I think, I had a coach and he said to me, you just sit down for 8 hours and you work through, the thing we were talking about. I think it was slides for a presentation and then you're done. And I said, my day doesn't look like that. I can't get those 8 hours. So what I do at the moment is I try to do an early start. So a 5:30, 2 hours. And I know no one's up and I can just really focus on the business. Then I've got probably 3 hours off where I do various getting ready for school, coming back, and then I've got a block of 4 hours in the middle, and then I can really focus in on the work and before I have to go again. And then if I need to, I do interviews in the evening, that kind of thing. So, and I try to theme my days. I don't know if anyone else finds this useful, but I try to have set blocks of time. So Wednesday is usually a content day. So I might do episodes for my own podcast, other interviews, social media posts, that kind of thing. And I try to keep client calls to the afternoon. So I'm a bit fresher to do the deep dive work. But I think it's always a juggle, isn't it, when you've got other responsibilities?
Yeah, definitely 100%. Well, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I so appreciate you coming on here, hanging out with us. What would you say is the 2 most important reasons why somebody should be getting onto a podcast? Like let's sell people on this.
Because people need to know who you are. They need to know the amazing things that you're doing. And if you're not visible, they can't find you, they can't see you. So that get on the podcast and let people know that you're there. And if you're nervous, remember that it is this one-on-one conversation. And the more that you practice, the easier it's going to become. And then you'll be able to build on that from there. So just get started.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, this has been fantastic. Where can people find you on social media if they wanted to follow you?
So I'm Victoria. Well, do you know what? I've got a web link and it's got all the connections on it. So if you go to victoriabennion.com, but /Sabrina, that will take you to a page and it's got all of the social media links where we can connect, and it's got a couple of freebies. So if you were thinking of being a guest on a podcast, there's a Canva template that you can download for a podcast one sheet, which is something that we always send out with pictures. It's got space for your biography, some topics, questions, and a headshot. And a checklist on how to be a great guest.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much for being here, for hanging out with us. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
You're all amazing. So it's just been great to be here. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to talk to everyone. And if anyone's got any questions, do drop me a line. I'm happy to answer anything on podcasting.
Awesome. For those of you that resonate with Victoria and all the goodness that she shared, make sure to check out Victoria Bennion. .com/Sabrina for all of the links. That is in a clickable link. That exact is in a clickable link in the description, wherever you're watching us at. That brings us to the end of another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you, Victoria, for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us all. To our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. And once again, I am the host here, and I would love for you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other every step of the way. Until next time.